Hello everyone, Gaku here with another update. Let's see if I can actually record it this time, but yeah, we'll see what happens. Anyway, I got home a few days ago from visiting with family. Spent a week visiting family, and that was just a lot of fun. A few things of note happened there, which you may or may not care about, but number one, I got to spend Halloween with family for the first time in ages, because, I'm never free on Halloween. And we've got this tradition that goes back many years, which is in addition to passing out candy to the trick-or-treaters, we'll cook hot dogs, and then any kids who want them or any parents who want them too, we'll just pass out the hot dogs. And we went through about 800 hot dogs this year in just a matter of hours, and that was a lot of fun. I was the one passing out the candy. We had a whole assembly line of people grilling the hot dogs, opening the buns, putting them in the buns, wrapping the buns in foil, and then passing them out. And we kind of went with an Addams Family theme, at least some of us did. So I was Lurch, the butler, and which meant that I just kind of go and pass out candy to the kids. We had Uncle Fester. Uncle Fester was my dad. He shaved his head, got a great outfit for it, and probably the best looking out of all of us. Cousin of mine was Gomez. We also had a Morticia. And every once in a while, a trick-or-treater dressed as Wednesday would come by, which is kind of odd. We didn't have a Wednesday, but there were no other Addams Family characters who came by, but there were Wednesdays. So every time a Wednesday came by, we basically dropped what we were doing, take an Addams Family photograph with them, and that was just a lot of fun. Let's see, other costumes that we had. The scariest costume that we had was an evil clown, and some of the kids were just so scared of the clown that they wouldn't even come to grab a hot dog, so that was kind of hilarious. My brother and his wife were a gladiator couple, so he had some nice eyeliner on. My other cousin, who was the clown, he set up his iPhone to do like a time-lapse video of the whole thing, so if people are interested, I might upload that to the channel just so people can see it. And it's kind of cool, I think. You watch all the hundreds of trick-or-treaters come by over time. Yeah, so that was a blast. Also, while I was visiting family, got to go to the first OKC Thunder game of the season, so the season opener, and it was a win they kind of pulled out of their ass, but it was a lot of fun. Just up in the nosebleeds, but it's really no bad seat in the house if you're at Chesapeake Arena. I mean, even up in the nosebleeds, you can see perfectly fine, and it's just really cool because I hadn't been to a Thunder game in years. That's weird. There's no units there, but it's highlighting for some reason. Anyway, that was a lot of fun, and we also got to go to a sports bar where we watched the second game of the season, which I believe was against Orlando, and Thunder were down like 18 points and then pulled it back and won with clutch double overtime win, and it was pretty wild at the bar, because everyone's just going crazy. So yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I got back a few days ago. Since then, I've been pretty busy, so I haven't uploaded any new videos. I've gone through all the queued up Paradox Shorts videos, so as of right now, there are no more set to go, so those will all be coming from future edits. And I haven't yet started uploading the Friday Zombie Mod campaign, which that one requires a lot of editing, and I just haven't had time to do it. I'm going to be leaving later tonight. I'm going to a wedding from a good friend of mine. I'm actually going to be his best man, so looking forward to that. And I'll be back Sunday. Sunday I'll be busy, but probably on Monday I'll start uploading the videos for the Friday campaign. And once I start uploading those, I'm going to try and pace it out so the last of them will be up by Friday when the session 2 starts. So looking forward to that, playing 2 Sicilies, and things are going well. This is the Saturday campaign, which for the last 2 sessions has been postponed / canceled. So that worked out great for me. Sorry to everyone else in the campaign. It wasn't because I wasn't there to host. It was just because there weren't enough other players to take to run the campaign. So for my part in contributing to that, I apologize, but also I'm thankful that that worked out. So state of the Saturday game is exactly the same as it was in the last video I uploaded. And chances are they will be continuing with it this Saturday, and I will not be there. I do have a sub. I gave him some idea of what I want to do, which is basically just sit tight and don't do anything. Got 20 infamy. I'm hoping that'll go down quite a bit, so that'll take 10 years to wear off completely. So probably by the end of the session I'll be at or near 0. But otherwise, I don't really want him to do anything right now. So the other thing I want to mention, though, is that in response to my last update, which is where I was following Munchkin around at the river, I initially thought the video was pretty well received, and there weren't any comments on the video, but there were 5 thumbs up, so I was like, okay, well, I guess people kind of agree with me, or maybe they understand my point of view. But after that, started this massive thread on the forums that we use about people disagreeing with my points and why they think I'm wrong about everything. So I wanted to just bring up a few examples and counter arguments. Alright, so I've loaded up the Sunday campaign at the point where I left off, and this campaign has been finished. Apparently apparently in that last session it was just kind of a clusterfuck as expected, because, you know, it's the last session and everyone's going nuts. But let's talk about some of the specific examples and why I think my theory and predictions are sound. Alright, so this is the Sunday campaign circa 1915, and this is the point where Germany was at its, I would say, weakest, having been cut down to size about 12 times. They lost the lands they took from Russia, they lost part of Austria, Galicia, this area. They even lost some land to Hungary. They lost whatever state this is to Scandinavia. They lost this bit to Netherlands. And they ended up losing 2 states to France over time. All of these gains from the nation around it, minus the cores that were taken back here, and also minus this one, these cost infamy. So weakening Germany by taking these states cost the nations around it infamy. I'm leaving out France and Italy because they had a bullshit alliance the whole time. But Netherlands added infamy, Scandinavia added infamy, I added quite a bit of infamy, and Hungary got back its cores here. Okay, so this is 1915. Skip ahead 14 years. Let's take a look at the state of Germany. Germany has gained back everything it lost, plus some, with the exception of lands that it couldn't take back due to treaties on the forms. So France had already gained this. They spent infamy on it. If it wanted to, I would say at this point Germany could very easily take this land back from France, but they had the treaties, so whatever. But this sort of demonstrates my point. Here we are in 1917. Germany is way over infamy, and they are weaker, but they still have cores on all this stuff, which means that the second they can rebuild their army and no one's looking, they can come back and pick off the nations one by one and regain all of their power, which is exactly what they did. So if you can go over infamy and stave off anyone for any amount of time, if you can core stuff, then you can always bounce back. That was one of my points. The other thing is that if you go over infamy and people do not make a concerted effort to contain you and keep you contained, then you will bounce back. So again, here we are, 1917. And this is the point where, looking at that massive thread on the forums, people say, well, it was my job to go after Germany. So this is where the prisoner's dilemma comes in. If France, Italy, and I had continued to contain Germany, then they might not have lost any additional land. They could have just sat there. Germany would be punished for the fact that it went over infamy, and the three of us would, in a mutual way, prevent Germany from rising back to power. But that's not what happened. So the prisoner's dilemma was failed when France and Italy decided to let Germany spring back into prominence. So the problem with this is that left me and a bunch of other nations that couldn't realistically do anything to Germany as the ones who had to contain it. So the moment that happened, my best play was no longer to contain Germany, because that would mean I'd be unilaterally going after Germany and wasting my resources in an attempt to keep Germany down. Meanwhile, Germany could ally with literally anyone, including France and Italy, who it had signed agreements with, could ally with any other nation in the world to make this a multi-front, unwinnable, instant death war for Russia. So not something that was very much in my best interest. My best interest was that if everyone else is backing out of containing Germany, I should also back out of containing Germany, which is what I did. Basically let them get all their cores back, and then that was the end of it. I actually allied with Germany after that because And the one thing I could be guaranteed of is that Germany wasn't going to come after me because they'd already gotten all their cores minus the bullshit cores in Scandinavia. So this is how going over infamy is not a problem, because you get the power initially, you core everything, and then you can always bounce back. The argument that other people are making is that once you get contained, you can be contained indefinitely, and that is true. That can happen, but as we saw in this campaign, that's not what happens. What happens is that people backstab each other, use a nation that's over infamy as leverage, and then allow that nation to recover. So as another example, I could have allied with Germany, and instead of attacking Germany to contain it, I could have been allied from the beginning and protected them from France and Italy and used that as leverage. So here we can see how even some nations might want to defend a nation that is over infamy. So going over infamy doesn't really mean anything, because alliances still exist in this game. Nations still use other nations as leverage. So the question is, which nations are you going to use for the best leverage? And the answer to that is the biggest ones, the most powerful ones. So this gets back to my second point, which I said that a lot of people disagree with, and that is the viability of Belgium. So Belgium on its own has no allies and no realistic chance to survive. And the reason for this is, if Belgium attacks Netherlands, number one, they have to take infamy to do that, and number two, no one is going to support them. Ever. I've never seen this before in any campaign. I defy you to find me one where it happened, and if you do, I would still say that's the exception. Belgium doesn't go after Netherlands because no one supports Belgium. Netherlands is a powerful nation. It has colonies all over the place, it has a navy, and it can, on its own, wreck Belgium. It also has cores, so it will go after Belgium and it will destroy it. Now, if you're France, or Prussia, or United Kingdom, and you have these two nations next to you, and you ask yourself, who are you going to ally with? Are you going to ally with the GIMP nation that's going to get instantly rolled? Or are you going to ally with the nation that's going to become more powerful after it annexes the nation right next to it? And the answer to that is everyone's going to ally with the Netherlands. Even if you don't go out of your way to help the Netherlands, you're not going to hinder the Netherlands. You're going to let them take Belgium, and then in exchange for that, you're going to say, hey, I let you take Belgium, so now you get to be my friend and my ally. And then Netherlands says, okay, and then they become friends with either Prussia or France or whoever for pretty much the rest of the campaign. And that's usually what happens. Belgium, if you're going to defend Belgium, you have to be aware that, number one, Netherlands has permacores on Belgium. So even if you were to, let's say France defends Belgium, France sends all of its troops up here to defend Belgium, but now Netherlands also has allies, so they're going to be opportunistic and probably call in Prussia or something, so all of Prussia versus all of France. And even if Netherlands loses, now they can just truce break on Belgium and then they'll win in the next war. So there's really no way that Belgium is going to survive this encounter. So my question is, why bother putting someone on it in the first place? Okay, maybe you want to put someone on Belgium just to make it more annoying for the Netherlands, which, okay, if that's what you want to do, sure. Now this gets back to my personal issues with the way this campaign would go. So let's say I were playing Netherlands and you put someone on Belgium. Just to be different, I would probably not annex Belgium. And that sounds ridiculous, but the reason I would do that is because I think it would be more interesting to have Belgium around than to kill it. Doing so would not be in my best interest, though, so that is, I keep Belgium around at my own peril. Keeping Belgium around means that the nations around me might say now, well, Netherlands isn't going to annex Belgium, so maybe we should just help Belgium annex Netherlands, and that's, a possibility. But it's a real problem, I think. You have the option here of greatly increasing your own power, basically doubling your industrial base, or gimping yourself and making yourself even more of a target than you were before. Okay, so that covers Belgium. We got Switzerland here. You can put a player on Switzerland. And you've got basically 3 countries around you that want to see you dead, 4 if Italy manages to form. So France, Austria, and Prussia, and Switzerland. Switzerland's got some industrial power, and that's pretty much it. They can't defend their lands, and anyone who comes after them is going to kill them. So the question is, if you're France, if you're Austria, if you're Prussia, are you going to allow Switzerland to exist, or are you going to get greedy and take that land for yourself? And virtually every campaign, the answer is you're going to be greedy and either try and take that land for yourself, or you're going to make sure that your allies get it. So how many times have we seen Switzerland get split down the middle, and maybe France gets half and Austria gets half, or Italy gets half and Austria gets half, or something like this? The allies are going to partition Switzerland because it's nearby, it's cheap, and it's easy to take. And if you put a player on it, it's kind of a waste of time. It's wasting their time because they're not going to be around very long. Unless you have some incredible diplomacy going on, like if you manage to get some actual diplomacy going and Switzerland can somehow maintain its neutrality, which is never going to happen, but if you could do that, then great. But that's not what happens in this campaign, because in this campaign people are greedy bastards and they're going to try and take land for themselves. Alright, what else? Brazil, this was an example I brought up recently, and one that a lot of people have a hard time understanding for whatever reason. So Brazil is way over here in South America, and in a campaign where they can form Latin American Union, their goal is to form Latin American Union by whatever means necessary. So everyone else in the world falls into one of two categories. Either the nations that are going to be annexed to form Latin American Union, which obviously have a vested interest in not being annexed, and everyone else who couldn't care less. Because as we saw in the case of the Netherlands, you want to be on the side of the more powerful nation because that's going to give you more leverage later. So what's more likely? Are the different nations around the world going to defend Venezuela against Brazil? Are they going to defend Peru against Brazil? Are they really going to ship troops over? Is Austria going to ship troops over here to defend Brazil? Is France going to pull troops off of its border, which is always, super militarized with Prussia and Netherlands and maybe even Italy, in order to defend nations against Brazil? Seriously? That's not going to happen. That's never going to happen. The only nations that could possibly intervene are UK and USA. But they can intervene, but are they going to? So, are you going to send your troops down here to take attrition, to die, to cost you money because you're in a war, because you have to fund your troops? And if you have a massive army and navy like UK, then it's going to cost you a fortune just to be at war with Brazil. So even though Brazil is a pushover, you still have to be at war with them in order to defeat them, right? So are you going to waste the time, the energy, the effort, etc. in blocking Brazil? I think the answer to that is no. USA's got a little bit easier because they can just march right through, but are they going to? I think, again, the answer is no. And the reason why? If Brazil wins and you are friendly to them, you now have a powerful ally. If Brazil loses, then so what? You just wasted your resources defending an unimportant nation. Are you really going to defend Paraguay? Why? Why would you bother? If Brazil declares war on Paraguay, are you going to join in that war to defeat Brazil? And then 5 years later, when they declare war on Colombia, are you going to go and defend Colombia too? Are you seriously going to be at war with Brazil every 5 years until the end of the game? Is that something you think is fun? Is that something you're going to do? And maybe your answer is yes, but I think for most players in this campaign, the answer to that is no, which means that Brazil can safely annex all of South America. So if they have 24.99 infamy when they do that, great, you can't contain them. You could still defend Colombia and Peru and Bolivia and Argentina and Chile and all these other nations. You could, at any time, come down here and defend these nations against Brazil. But if they have 25.01 infamy, is that really the incentive that you need to go devote your own troops to defeat Brazil? I mean, does it really make a difference? If they have 25.01 infamy, are you going to waste your time containing Brazil? I think the answer to that is a no. And even if you do, there's no obligation. They don't have to surrender ever. You might have to fully occupy Brazil, which great. You fully occupy them, you contain them. Then so what? So they're cut down for 5 years. If you haven't wasted infamy taking states from them or releasing people, then you haven't really done anything to permanently weaken Brazil. So Brazil can go over infamy, they can take land, they can core it, and you can waste your time cutting them down, and then they're going to bounce back just like Germany did. So if they have 25.01 infamy, are you going to come after them? Probably not. If they have 35.01 infamy, are you going to come after them? Probably not. What if they have 200 infamy for whatever reason? They annex all of South America as quickly as possible. Are you going to waste your time and energy coming after them? Probably not. And this is why it's safe to go over infamy. Same thing with USA. Are you going to make it your sole mission for the entire campaign to defend Mexico? You can. There's no reason you can't. I mean, good luck, UK. You can do it. But if you're going to do that, in order to keep them down and weak, you're going to have to waste infamy. So unless you're going to keep troops on the border the entire campaign, and every 5 years declare war on USA if they happen to go over infamy, invade, fully occupy, and then take nothing in addition. No infamy added, no colonies, nothing. You just come in, you take 100%, and then you peace out, and then they're cut down for 5 years, and then you do it again in 5 years. So are you going to do that? You can. Are you realistically going to do that? The answer is no. Now, you might defend Mexico here and there, but let's say UK is now engaged in some other wars somewhere else. Maybe they're fighting Russia, maybe they're fighting China, who knows. USA can use that opportunity at any time to come after Mexico, come after USA, whoever. And the fact that you are looking somewhere else means that they can use the opportunity to come after Mexico and whatnot. And just like we saw with Brazil, if USA has 25.01 infamy, can you contain them? Sure. Are you going to? Maybe not. Are you really going to fully fund your military, fully fund your navy, send your troops over, lose a ton of them to attrition, get entire stacks wiped, just so you can cut down the USA? You can. Are you going to every 5 years until the end of the game? My answer to that is probably no. And even if you wanted to, let's say you skip a few years here and there. Well, now you've given the USA time to rebuild, and now it's going to be a hell of a lot harder for you. I barely even mentioned the fact that USA over here is not necessarily on its own. Let's say USA goes way over infamy. Let's say Brazil goes way over infamy. They fully annex South and North America. Do you think they're not going to help each other? I mean, let's say UK does declare war on USA. Brazil can join USA in defending its homeland. I mean, these are things that happen in a real game. It's not like every nation that goes over infamy is instantly a pariah, and we saw that with the case of Germany. So Germany went way over. They still had allies. They still had defensive allies, certainly. And politics meant that just because someone went over infamy, they weren't instantly killed. Spain could do the same thing. They could spend tons of infamy annexing Portugal within the first, say, 20 years of the game. France has a vested interest here. UK has a vested interest here. But again, are you going to support the stronger nation, the nation that's going to come out on top, against the weaker nation that's probably going to die anyway? Or are you going to waste your own resources defending the GIMP nation just because? I mean, what do you get out of it? What do you get out of defending Portugal against Spain? You get maybe a colony or two. Okay, great. You get Philippines. Meanwhile, Spain can come after Portugal again and again and again, especially if Portugal happens to get a core on it. So France could at any time support Spain in taking Portugal. Guess what? France now has a permanent ally in Spain who's always going to come and help them beat whoever they feel like. So there are reasons why nations will support each other in going over infamy logically. Now, some nations, this is a little bit trickier. For example, France is kind of limited in who it can expand into, plus it has very powerful adversaries on its border. So France, this might not apply to quite as much, but even so, they could if they wanted to. They could acquire southern Belgium, they could acquire northern Belgium, and if they had sufficient power and sufficient allies, they could take all of the Netherlands. They could start eating away at Germany. They could do the same thing Germany did in this game. They could just keep eating and eating. And then after they've cored it, so what if they get cut down? They can come back later. They could ally with someone like UK and then get every single one of their cores back. So again, this is why going over infamy is not necessarily a problem. It's just, can you maintain your power long enough to core it, and then you can always bounce back. And if you happen to demoralize the person you've gone after in the meantime and they quit the game, great, no one's going to defend that nation anymore. So you win. Congratulations. There was an argument that the different nations in South America actually quit the campaign before they were annexed by the LAU. And to that I would say, why did they quit? Chances are it was because their nations were no longer viable for whatever reason, most likely because Brazil had already taken land from them. So yeah, if your nation isn't viable, you quit, and once you quit, you're done, and whatever nation took your land has won. So this can happen just about anywhere. Let's see, in the Far East, we've got here a number of nations that are just sort of cannon fodder, and I don't think anyone's going to dispute that. But why bother having a Punjab? I mean, just think about this. Punjab has 3 million pops in a handful of states, and UK can instantly roll them. They can call in all their miners and they die. So sure, Punjab, if they were able to get alliance before the game started with UK and say, hey, I'll be your best buddy and maybe you'll let me form India someday. And yeah, if they could do that, that'd be fantastic, and I think that would be a very interesting campaign. But is that what's going to happen? Probably not. Why? Because Panjab's going to be one of the least experienced players, and it's going to be someone who doesn't already know that Panjab's going to instantly die. So why even bother putting someone on Panjab? Same with Afghanistan. I mean, even Persia could take out Afghanistan. Anyone could take out Afghanistan. There's 1 million pops. Their military is pathetic, and annexing it is just trivial. So who is going to stick their neck out to defend Afghanistan? So if Persia were to declare war on Afghanistan day 1, or day 180 or whatever, is Russia going to come and defend Afghanistan from Persia? Why? Why would they do that? I mean, if Persia became more powerful at the expense of Afghanistan, wouldn't it make more sense to say, hey, Persia, be my best buddy and I'll let you take Afghanistan? Same thing with Panjab. If UK declares war on Panjab, who's realistically going to defend Panjab from the UK? Answer to that is no one. No one can even get over here. So, again, why bother? Something like Burma would be a more viable nation, I think. But even there, I mean, there are just so many nations that are set up like bowling pins here, and then once one falls, all the nations next to them fall, so there's really no point in having people on any of them. And it could make an interesting campaign, sure, but I would argue something would be an even more interesting campaign is put someone on Bavaria, which is something you never see, because why is that? Well, you need Bavaria to form Germany, and people just kind of assume that's going to happen, but wouldn't it be a hell of a lot more interesting if we had someone on an actual viable nation that has some power to it, that can have a diplomatic impact of some sort? I mean, a player Bavaria, that would be actually interesting. We could have a two Sicilies, and the assumption is that Italy's always going to form because of red shirts and whatnot, but we've seen several times now that people will go out of their way to annex Sardinia and Piedmont just to keep Italy from forming. So why not have a two Sicilies? I mean, these I think are more viable than some of the other nations. And let me put it this way: if you're going to allow nations like Peru, Argentina, and Chile, and Punjab and Afghanistan, then there's no reason not to have a Bavaria or two Sicilies. I mean, if you got Belgium, and Belgium almost always gets ruled, then why not have a Bavaria? Why not have a Hanover, for that matter? I mean, there are just so many more interesting nations from a diplomatic standpoint. And if your answer is that they're going to be annexed, then I would say, why bother having any of these other nations either? So you have here a few nations that are actually interesting from a diplomatic standpoint, that have some measure of power and that could influence world politics to some extent. But we don't have players on these, but we have players in all these other nations that have no impact whatsoever. So I'm just throwing that out there. So that gets to my main problems with the campaign, and since infamy has no real consequence in this campaign, the only consequence is that you can be cut down. But because people are unlikely to cut each other down, and even if they do, it's not going to be for an extended period of time, then I don't see the point in not going over infamy. And the argument has been made that no one has ever done it before, and my counter to that is Germany in this campaign. And it's true, no one has done it before, but I think that's because no one has thought of it. But I think in the next campaign, if Brazil doesn't go way over infamy to annex South America as quickly as possible, then they'll be setting themselves back. If USA doesn't go over infamy to annex Mexico as quickly as possible, then they'll be setting themselves back. Honestly, I think the big winner in this scenario is the UK, because UK's got the navy that no one else can match, which means if you can't match UK's navy, you can't defeat the UK, because you got to get troops over here one way, right? So unless you have like an entire worldwide coalition going against the UK, they can just pick off every single nation that's not protected, which basically means every single miner, all the Asian miners, all the South African miners, even South America. UK could just go on a killing spree. And once they start that snowball effect, they just get more and more powerful, and then who's going to oppose them? And I already showed in the beginning of this campaign that UK can solo half the world. I was subbing as UK. I took down France, Germany, Spain, I believe Italy, and Japan all together. And It was like they tried. I mean, they put forth a valiant effort, and they almost got lucky, but you know, the Navy carried the day, and then I won. So that's the kind of scenario you're looking at, where once a nation gets powerful, it's more of a liability for you to go after that nation than it was in the first place. So there's no real reason not to try and boost yourself in this way. So this is probably a lot longer than I intended it to be, but just wanted to sort of reiterate my problems with the campaign. And it all comes down to two things. The one I mentioned in my last update was infamy not really doing anything, because if you have infamy that can restrict you in some way, then you have to meter your expansions. And the other thing is diplomacy being a joke, because in this campaign there are very few actual treaties. But I do think that in a campaign where it's every man for himself, the best thing you can possibly do is expand yourself as quickly as possible at the expense of everyone around you. And there is some risk with that, and you know, it might come back to bite you in the ass, but I think overall that's the best strategy in a campaign like this. And again, that's why I'm not going to be taking part in the Sunday campaigns, because I don't like to ruin other people's games as a general rule. And it's also interesting to me that this so-called casual Sunday campaign has been the most stressful campaign I've taken part in recent memory. So we can kind of see where the incentives push people in one direction or another. Last things I want to mention, I am seriously considering taking another look at the Blood and Eisen group, just based on the problems and issues that I've identified with this mod and this rule set. So for those of you who don't know, Blood and Eisen is a Victoria 2 multiplayer group that focuses very heavily on foreign diplomacy, and some of them roleplay even more than Cream Lord. I know it's hard to imagine, but seriously, some of them are like way into the RP. And the reason I stopped playing with them was because I found that it was just too restrictive. And by that I mean there's sort of a fine line between the complete anarchy of this free-for-all game and the very structured system that they were using, where all diplomacy had to be done through the forums. You couldn't do any like backstabbing in the game, which was kind of a turnoff. But on the upside, there's something to be said for doing more diplomacy, and I think I've seen both ends of the spectrum now, so I kind of want to give it another shot just to see what would happen. And also because I do enjoy playing some of those smaller nations, and I know some of them can avoid being annexed and can do well for a while, but in a campaign like this one, I just don't think it's viable. So one of my very first multiplayer experiences was playing Belgium, and that was a lot of fun at the time. You know, I would like to play something like Portugal in a campaign where I'm not going to be instantly eaten by Spain. Things like this are of interest to me. So in a campaign that focuses on diplomacy much more than just land grabbing from weak neighbors, I think that's something that might be interesting. So, you know, I might be looking into that at some point. Last thing, I'm probably going to have to move at the end of the month, so I'm going to be holding off on starting too many new things or trying to avoid too much video editing, because I've got a lot of other stuff I need to be working on right now anyway. So here for the next month and a half or so, probably not as many videos as previously, but you know, that's just the way it goes. So yeah, that rambled on for a lot longer than I wanted it to. In summary, we'll have zombie mod videos up next week, have a sub for the Saturday ranked campaign, which hopefully nothing will happen, and then I'll pick up the week after. Light on videos for the next little while. If you want to see the time-lapse video from Halloween, let me know and I'll show you what it looks like when you pass out 800 hot dogs to people. Time for me to get ready for the wedding this weekend. So thanks for watching and have a good one.